Hello and welcome to PTV World. This particular live transmission regarding the deteriorating regional security environment owing to India's unilateral, illegal and provocative measures against Pakistan. A short while ago, we have seen a major development. The Congress chief of India, Mallikarjun Kharge, has questioned as to why Prime Minister Modi cancelled his visit to Kashmir and left the tourists at the risk of the attackers. And he has also said Prime Minister Narendra Modi received intelligence regarding this particular attack 3 days prior to this particular attack, and after receiving this particular intelligence, he cancelled his trip to Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Also, opposition has slammed the Bharatiya Janata Party's government and Prime Minister Narendra Modi for security lapses in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Also, we have seen that Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif today visited Inter-Services Intelligence Headquarters, and according to Prime Minister's office statement, let me quote, the visit entailed a detailed briefing on the prevailing security environment with a particular focus on preparedness for conventional threat in the light of India's increasingly aggressive and provocative posture along Pakistan's eastern border. The leadership was apprised of regional security developments and the evolving threat matrix, including conventional military options, hybrid warfare tactics, and terrorist proxies, unquote. Also, a major development at the United Nations Security Council, where Pakistan's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ambassador Asim Iftikhar Ahmed, briefed the council members regarding the situation that is developing in the South Asian region between Pakistan and India owing to India's provocative actions, saying where he has highlighted India's provocative actions, including the unilateral measures announced on 23rd of April and aggressive military posturing. And he has also cautioned the Security Council members that these actions were unjustified and dangerous and could lead to catastrophic consequences. During this particular mood at the United Nations Security Council, all the council members underscored that the long-standing Kashmir dispute is the root cause of the regional instability. Also, when we talk about when India unilaterally suspended Indus Water Treaty after the 22nd of April Pahalgam incident on 23rd of April, revoking it, suspending it unilaterally and illegally. Now India has resorted to stop the water on Chenab River, which as per the treaty comes in the share of Pakistan, and there has been a considerable reduction of the water inflow towards Pakistan. Also, we'll be discussing in this particular live transmission regarding as to what sort of an impact the Indian airlines are having after Pakistan went on to making the countermeasures regarding India's unilateral and illegal measures. On 23rd of April, Pakistan banned the Indian operated and Indian owned airlines from passing through Pakistan's airspace. All those important developments are for discussion in today's show. For that, we are honored to be joined in the studio by Ambassador Saeed Khalid, former ambassador. Mr. Khalid, thank you very much for being with us on this special live transmission. We really appreciate that. On the video link at the same time, we are honored to be joined by Dr. ASMA Shakir Khwaja, Executive Director at Center for International Strategic Studies, Azad Jammu and Kashmir. Dr. ASMA, thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Ambassador Khalid, if you allow me, let me begin the discussion with Dr. Asma. Dr. Asma, there has been a revelation now that this particular attack, which happened on 22nd of April in Pahalgam in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, Indian government and Prime Minister Modi in particular had got the intelligence 3 days prior to that, and he also cancelled his trip to IIOJK, putting the lives of the tourists at risk. How do you look at this particular behavior on the part of Indian Prime Minister when he had that particular intelligence report in particular and yet cancelled and did nothing to avert that particular attack?
Very rightly pointed out. Actually, not only this, but Amit Shah a few weeks back visited IIOJK and removed the 3 security checkposts by checkposts close to Pahalgam. So this is when we try to decipher this whole incident. It looks like a chain of trends and actions which led to this situation. And because as you said that Modi was supposed to visit IIOJK, but he did not. He chose not. Even after the incident, he didn't visit because this area. India is actually a colonial power in IIOJK. This area is only a piece of land or territory for them, and that is why they are not concerned with the lives and peace and security and stability in IIOJK. They only want to grab the land and that's it. And their own forces, their own military forces, are part of the state-sponsored terrorism carried out against Kashmiris living in IIOJK. Modi, like you can see right after the incident, the phenomena of collective punishments and the illegal arrests and killings, extrajudicial killings, all this is going on. It means that India is part of the problem. That is not the country which is suffering from this, but it is part of the problem. And that is why they are not interested in resolving Kashmir dispute, despite their several assurances in several agreements and occasions. I would like to
Many
remind you.
questions as to the conduct of the Prime Minister Narendra Modi himself and the government he's actually leading in India. When you get the intelligence 3 days prior and yet you don't do anything to avert that particular attack. Also, that very phenomenon that was unleashed post-Pahalgam incident of collective punishment. Dr. Asma, I'll come back to you for this particular phenomenon to be discussed in detail, as well as to what sort of sufferings the innocent people in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir had to go through. Ambassador Khalid, now what does this actually depict when the Prime Minister had the intelligence 3 days prior? And how do you think the international players would be responding ideally to such a scenario, the Prime Minister ignoring intelligence report altogether and that incident happens, and then right away the authorities take unilateral and provocative actions against Pakistan rather than giving any sort of a justification to the security lapses of their own?
It does not surprise me that this whole thing and the aftermath, it has happened in 2025. It should have happened a year ago when the Indian elections were coming up, because this is his normal play. Modi is very transparent. You know, he does gangsterism openly, he does it. And he did
transparency as far as gangsterism is concerned.
He did that in the 2019 elections. He created an atmosphere of war and worked up the voters, his supporters, and returned with a clear majority. So it is one wonders why he didn't do it in 2024 before the May election a year ago, because he could have maybe gotten the same response and returned with a majority. He did not. We don't know what restrained him last year. He's doing it now because of the coming elections, particularly in Bihar, followed by other states. And this is a way of saving, himself, saving his extremist party, saving its patrons in the RSS. So it doesn't surprise at all. Surprises that it didn't happen a year ago. Doesn't surprise that it has happened again.
So it doesn't surprise you that it has happened. We've seen also, we know for a fact that there are upcoming elections in Bihar as well. And this is very much a proven pattern on the part of Modi, as you already used a very interesting term, the transparency as far as his gangsterism is concerned. Now, as far as this revelation is concerned, the presence of intelligence report, the intelligence that this attack might happen, and it then happens 3 days after, and he cancels. And when we try to connect the dots, and then the blame game again started towards Pakistan, that it was Pakistan which was involved in this particular incident. So the facts on the ground actually speak contrary to what the Indian government has claimed and tried to allege Pakistan in this. should it serve as an eye-opener for the international community, especially, I'll come to that aspect as well, when the United Nations Security Council had a mood and there was a detailed briefing on the part of our permanent representative to the UN.
You know, it doesn't surprise me that the West is, you know, like behaving like a meek cow, not coming out openly, and we know the reason. The reason is that they are supporting India as a counterweight to China, and they will not do things which will upset India. So that you know explains America's and other Western countries. However, there is a difference. The difference is that the world has now understood the modus operandi of Mr. Modi. He did that in Gujarat and got banned from traveling to the United States.
Right.
He did that whenever he got an opportunity. He did that again and again and now again. What is the difference? Two differences. Number one, there are voices within India saying that all this is a planned game and this is the motive.
Right.
Secondly, no outside country has come out openly in strong support of India. Again, because they know what's going on. So whatever support we hear, oh yes, but this is sad, you know, and on the other hand, he must be wondering that the world, whole world, entire world is talking about Kashmir now. That's not his objective. His objective would be to talk against Pakistan.
So very clearly, what I understand from your take at this particular point in time is there was a clear-cut defeat when it comes to India's posturing internationally. When the world at large has finally come to an understanding that this is a particular repeated pattern on the part of...
And the opinion now in India, this time.
The saner voices in India as well. But we have seen there has been a very sinister effort on the part of the authorities in India to suppress such saner voices as well. I'll come back to you for this particular thing. And as if we try to compare as to what sort of defeat Indian side had got regarding this particular front and the kind of diplomatic efforts Pakistani authorities had during this entire saga. Dr. Asma, already you were talking about that very phenomenon of collective punishment. Could you give us a brief idea as to what sort of sufferings the people in IIOJK had to face post Pahalgam? I've seen footages, I've seen pictures. In fact, the entire world is witnessing that very damage and that destruction that came in the wake of this Pahalgam incident.
First of all, the biggest suffering Kashmiri people are facing in IIOJK, that is denial of their right to self-determination. And that one denial is leading to the trauma of conflict, long-standing conflict, in the illegal authority of Indian armed forces and the way they try to malign them and to harass them and to inculcate fear in their hearts so that they can accept it as their fate, the Indian occupying forces. And then Indian government, political government, they are using this phenomena as a political card, as an electoral slogan. And that is where Muslims and Kashmiris are facing this hatred all across India. But that hatred is manifestation of the identity, the manifestation of the identity Kashmiris have and the way Indian Hindu public treats them, think of them. This all is leading to the fear in children and to conflict trauma. But one good thing is I would like to mention that because of Modi's irrational, out of proportion, ill-informed response on Pahalgam incident, Kashmir issue has been internationalized. If you see the foreign ministers of friendly countries, United Nations Secretary General, US, everyone is saying that Kashmir issue should be resolved through dialogue and this situation or escalation should be handled with wisdom and maturity, which of course we all know, being the neighbor of India, that Modi lacks that such wisdom and maturity. So this whole scenario, I would like to mention that Daniel Murky, the famous writer of No Exit from Pakistan, during an interview to Karan Thapar, clearly stated that Pakistan, in terms of in the capacity to defend itself, defend AJK, Azad Jammu and Kashmir, is fully capable to do that. So India is not neither superior on the international border or on line of control than Pakistan. So this war hysteria, this jingoism will only create acceptance, tolerance for violence among Indian public. So in the long run, more than Kashmiris, it is the Indian people who would suffer from Modi's aggressive posturing. And we can see the result of that aggressive posturing and aggressive diplomacy of their external affairs minister. Bharat, India is right now isolated in the whole world. What Modi is saying without concrete evidence, that is not been echoed in the statement of any international leader or organization. Everyone internationally, even I was so glad when the UN Secretary General stated that there should be a transparent and credible investigation of the incident, and then the culprits should be deal with the law and whatever laws and this has. So this is a great thing that Pakistan said that we need transparent and independent investigation of the event. Now UN Secretary General also endorsed that point. And when Pakistan talked about independent investigations, that is not the only the first time. When the Samjhota Express was burnt and the more than 100 Pakistanis were burnt alive, and India accused Pakistan and Pakistani agencies for this crime, Pakistan even then asked India to conduct an independent investigation, and the world has seen that after investigations, a serving colonel of Indian Army, a radical Hindu, was culprit in that case, and he burnt more than 100.
Very important point made, Dr. Asma. I'll take this particular point to Ambassador Khalid also. Ambassador Khalid, our Samjhota Express incident, the allegations made towards Pakistan. Later on, investigation happens. It reveals that the insiders were involved in that, and there was no hand of Pakistan in that. So, but before that, there was a rampant pattern on the part of Indians of blaming Pakistan. This time around, we've seen also in the Pulwama incident. Now, is there any sort of, when we talk about the international norms under the UN Charter, one sovereign country being blamed by its neighbor of its alleged involvement in that incident, and that country is repeatedly asking for a neutral, transparent investigation? Is there any sort of a mechanism to ascertain the facts and put the facts right, that the UNSC or the international players could impress upon India that it should, if it wants actually to ascertain who the perpetrators were, it should accept that offer from a country which it has been continuously blaming? Because the previous pattern of such type of incidents, as in Samjhota Express incident, as in Pulwama incident, so it should be accepting that. Is there any mechanism that the UNSC could force it?
In the domain of international relations, the saying goes, there are no permanent friends, and there are permanent interests, which means when you refer to the international community, after all, these are countries, parties,
Right.
governments, humans who lead these governments. And how do they act or react and decide on a certain line of action? It is for their own national interest. And so is the United Nations. United Nations is a conglomeration of all nations. United Nations has no character per se of its own. It's the parties, the members.
But there are documents, the United Nations Charter, the mandate of the United Nations Security, one of the leading organs out of the 6 of the United Nations. So those documents, that very spirit, that bind all these countries together under one umbrella. Isn't it so?
Sadly,
There is
sadly,
there is a spirit of collectivism over there, isn't it?
sadly, it is not effective. I mean, now the United Nations has been there for 80 years. We saw President Zardari, presiding a ceremony about the Victory Day 80 years ago. And what do we see in these 80 years? When did the UN Security Council act decisively? And when it didn't? And Kashmir is a very, very, it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy which is going on. But for the last 19 months, what is happening in Gaza? I would refer the question back to you. Where is the international community? Where are the norms? Where is the charter? What's happening in every day?
But at least, Ambassador Khalid, as per my understanding, I'm a very humble student of this international affairs, but as per my humble understanding, when we talk about the aggression or the brutalities or the atrocities which have been perpetrated by the Israelis in Gaza, that particular case was brought at the International Court of Justice. There are provisions as far as the United Nations Charter is concerned as to what should be ideally the normal behavior of a certain country. Then regarding the genocide, everything is documented, is on the paper in black and white, right? So whether implementation happens or not, but when it comes to one country accusing the other one, I'm curious to understand, is there any sort of a documented mechanism in black and white when it comes to the UN or the UNSC, if a certain country is accusing the other and the other is offering for a neutral and transparent investigation, is there anything written or documented in black and white of such a mechanism? Because as far as the law in a certain country, the defamation laws, the two individuals, if one individual goes on to blame the other for certain things, he'll definitely ask for evidence. He will definitely ask for an investigation. If those allegations are unfounded and baseless, then the defamatory laws come into action. So are there any such laws at the international level? Is there any documented mechanism?
I would say there are rules. And within the UN system, there are rules that you can have binding resolutions and you can have non-binding resolutions. And in order to have a binding resolution, you need the yes vote of 5 permanent members, or at least no permanent member should object to that. The moment one of them objects, it becomes non-binding. So we are stuck there. It is like, fine, it can raise the moral voice, no doubt, it can do that, but it cannot. It does not have the force.
But at least it would have definitely some symbolic significance. When we talk about that phenomenon of Islamophobia, we saw that Pakistan led the entire Muslim world. There were back-to-back incidents happening across the world. Pakistan spearheaded that campaign at the UN General Assembly. There was a resolution passed, which was led by Pakistan, to declare International Day Against Islamophobia on 15th of March. Can such an endeavor be made also that if, keeping in view that very repeated pattern of Indian authorities, they start blaming Pakistan without any evidence? So since we have had the diplomatic victory internationally, our permanent representative has also apprised the United Nations Security Council. Also, isn't the time ripe now to bring in such a resolution on the very lines?
I mean, I would say that efforts can be made, but there are 2 countries, beginning with I, which do not respect international law. And you know those 2 I's, India and Israel. They are, for me, they are outlaw states as far as international law is concerned.
I'll come back to
They
you.
will not.
Ambassador Khalid, I'll come back to you. But for now, we are on to be joined by Lieutenant Retired TALAT MASOOD, senior analyst on the phone line. General Masood, thank you very much for your time for being with us on this special live transmission. Really appreciate that. General Masood, today Prime Minister had the visit at NIFTAC as well as Inter-Services Intelligence Headquarters. He was given the detailed briefing regarding as to preparedness in case of a conventional threat to Pakistan from India. How are you looking at this particular visit, in particular at this point in time?
Whose visit you are talking about?
Sharif visited the Inter-Services Intelligence Headquarters today, was given a detailed briefing regarding the deteriorating regional security environment. How are you looking at that?
Well, I think it is very necessary for senior leaders, and especially the ones who are decision makers, to constantly sort of interact with our security agencies and get a briefing as to exactly what is happening, the intelligence briefing. And I think this is a right thing, and Pakistan seems to be well prepared, but at the same time, things continue to change. And it's very necessary to get the briefing. But it's not only just the briefing point of view, it is also the preparedness. I think our armed forces are fully prepared. They know that the threat is fairly imminent, but they are going to repel the threat, and they are not, I think they are going to give, if India does have that audacity to sort of really break all international laws and attack Pakistan, then Pakistan obviously will retaliate, and retaliate with full force, and the whole country is with it. The people are with the armed forces, and India has no justification whatsoever of trying to sort of ram through its aggressive and absolutely incorrect policy towards Pakistan, towards Kashmiri, and towards the whole situation is so alarming, and that it could also trigger a nuclear conflict. And that is why I think the international community is even more concerned that these two countries are nuclear armed, and in case of desperation, the nuclear capability can also be used.
General Masood, now the opposition in India has slammed Bharatiya Janata Party, Prime Minister Modi, in particular with the security lapses in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Previously, we saw post-Pulwama the kind of startling revelations which were made by former governor of IIOJ, Satyapal Malik, that also alluded to the fact that there was a clear-cut security lapse on the part of the Indian authorities. We've also seen now post-Pahalgam the voices from within India questioning as to why that intelligence, which was available 3 days before this incident happened, was not given a heed to, and why the tourists were left at a risk. Rather than being accountable to their own public, they've been blaming Pakistan for its alleged involvement in that particular. What sort of behavior, when we talk about any country and its authorities, would be taken in the Committee of Nations?
Well, I think they are pointing out the lapses, but this does not really alter the situation and the context. So I think we should not overplay this point. No doubt it's the weakness of the Indian sort of intelligence and also the policies that they are pursuing. In fact, we should focus more that there is no justification whatsoever for India to launch an aggressive action. In fact, India is to be blamed for what it has been doing in Kashmir all along, and the very fact that it has suppressed the voices, their aspirations, and their due rights ever since the creation of Pakistan. So I think that is the point which should be highlighted. But of course, these incidents cannot be ignored, and Pakistan is taking full, I think, all measures to counter these.
Right. So countering Indian aggressive posture, the provocative actions, the kind of pronouncements which have been made so far, Pakistan's diplomatic efforts so far have actually led to that very clarity that has been brought before the world community. What do you see? What has the world community in practical terms done so far in order to de-escalate the situation, which of course originated from the Indian side? Is there any sort of a pressure, do you feel, that has been put for the Indian authorities that they should step back from this very aggressive posturing?
Well, I would say that I wouldn't call it pressure, but I think certainly they are interested that these matters should be peacefully settled. And there are, and as you rightly point out, they are approaching the Indian authorities and the Indian leadership, and especially Prime Minister Modi, and their leadership is sort of saying that it is in the interest of both the countries that they should resolve matters through peaceful means, through negotiations, and give and take, rather than resort to avoid, a situation where.
Pardon for the interjection over here. We clearly understand there is a call on the part of the international community. We have seen the international players, also the United Nations Secretary General, the major powers, also urging both the sides to exercise maximum restraint and go for dialogue and discussion and negotiations to resolve the crisis we are currently having. What about that investigation? What about ascertaining the facts, putting the facts right, that who actually was involved in this particular incident, after which India, without any credible evidence or investigation, resorted to blaming Pakistan?
Well, you have a point, but the thing is that it is very difficult to force an opinion or an idea or your logic onto someone, a country which is much larger than you and is not prepared to listen to you. It's very difficult to sort of impose your thoughts on them.
Right. Lieutenant General retired TALAT MASOOD analyst, thank you very much for joining this particular live transmission. Dr. Asma, do you think this time is for any diplomatic efforts to bring in a sort of a resolution that calls for accountability of a certain state that blames an independent sovereign state in particular for its alleged involvement in an attack in which it was not? Should there be any mechanism on that front as well?
Definitely, because a war jingoism of a madman has put the lives of billions of people on stake during past few days. So definitely, until or unless there would not be any accountability at international level for such behavior, that can become a norm. Because as a student of strategic studies, we always used to analyze that Modi regime is trying to set a new normal in South Asia, and that meaningless, senseless aggression and aggressive postures are part of his new normal. And what new normals he has established? It is normal now. Mob lynching is normal in India. Gau Raksha is normal in India. Killing people, Christians in Manipur is normal now. And this Kashmir fiasco, because Kashmir has become a fiasco because of the Indian policies of not addressing the issue. So definitely Pakistan need to upscale its game on diplomatic level, because the diplomatic acceptance across the globe which is emerging for Pakistan and for Kashmir conflict, that we should tap on this. And
very much for being with us, Dr. Asma Shakir Khaja, Executive Director, Center for International Strategic Studies, Azad Jammu and Kashmir. I would really appreciate you taking out for this special live transmission. Ambassador KHALID, now the unilateral illegal suspension of Indus Water Treaty. Now India has resorted to stopping the water on Chenab River downstream, which is going to have quite a catastrophic impact as far as our share of water is concerned, the things which we do with the usage of that particular water. What does international norm basically say about it when it comes to the share of water, keeping in view that this was agreed upon in the form of this treaty, that the three rivers belong to them, three belong to us, and these are the rivers they have started messing up with after the unilateral suspension of that treaty?
Indeed, it is a very, very challenging situation. It is not so much India's threats to, Modi's threat to go to any extent to punish the killers. No. What worries me more is his threat against Pakistan, which is a kind of war through other means, economic warfare. Indus Water Treaty is another example, another domain, sharing water resources. They have gone to the IMF, to the World Bank, IMF and the Asian Development Bank, and they say they will go to FATF to accuse Pakistan. So what really requires now is a very, very vigorous diplomatic campaign by Pakistan to contest and to counter these Indian moves. For me, that is very important.
What about this? How to counter this particular Indian move? The National Security Committee, in categorical terms, said anything done with the waters of Pakistan that belong to Pakistan would be considered as an act of war. Now they've started stopping the water in Chenab. Now there are multiple Indian media reports which suggest that they are going to halt the flow of water at Kishanganga Dam as well. So what are the options at this point in time?
I think we have to launch a counter campaign at the diplomatic level by the heads of state, heads of government writing to their counterparts, writing to the international organizations to send powerful delegations to those organizations to plead Pakistan's case. There is no alternative really.
Okay, so let's go back a little in history. The revocation, the unilateral illegal revocation of Article 370, the issue of Kashmir was once again internationalized. There were a lot of diplomatic efforts made by the Pakistani authorities. That time also, we clearly see there are a lot of diplomatic efforts being done by the Pakistani authorities, sensitizing the international community of India's aggressive posturing. But that particular revocation of Article 370 stands there where India did it. This unilateral suspension of Indus Water Treaty, do you think it's going to continue the way the revocation of Article 370?
Well,
what should be the, why shouldn't there be a concrete and a decisive response on the part of international community when it comes to the matter of this concern?
International community will act depending on our efforts. It will not act on its own. So it is upon us. And you mentioned Article 370. So it is for India, it is for Modi to judge whether they were successful or not. You know, there are parameters of measuring success.
Right.
So when you say act of war, that's a final thing. But diplomacy is the first line of defense. Our defense has to start with diplomacy and keeping other options, you know.
Mr. Saeed Khalid from Ambassador joining us in the studio for this special segment of the special live transmission at PTV World. We really appreciate you taking time out for this particular special transmission. It's time for a short break. After the break, you'll be watching the news headlines. After that particular news headline, we'll be resuming the discussion from here. For that, stay tuned.